Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we begin a new krach in Lekutei Sichos, Chelek Chaf Aleph. We're going to be learning today the first Sicha on Parshas Shemos. This Shir today is being learned to Nishmas Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rabbi Menashe Koltman. Oifim Pasik, Vayihi ki yoru amayaldis asolikim, and it was when Hashem saw that the midwives were fearful of Hashem and they did not heed Pare's command to kill the Jewish babies born. Vayas lahem batim, and Hashem made for them houses. What does this mean? Hashem makes for them houses. Steht in Gemara Seite, so the Gemara in Seite says, Rav and Shmuel, there's an argument between Rav and Shmuel how to interpret this. Chad Amar, one opinion is, Bate Kohuna uLevia, that Hashem gave them houses of Kohuna and Levia. Another one is that Hashem gave them houses of kingdom. The opinion that says that Hashem gave them houses of Kohanim and Leviim, who are these? Aaron and Moshe. This is Aaron and Moshe that come from Yecheved. The other opinion that says that Hashem gave them houses of kingdom, David Nami Miriam Kasi. David HaMelech, part of his lineage is also from Miriam. So these were the two midwives, Yecheved and Miriam, that as a reward Hashem gave them, Batikohone, Levia, and Malchus. In Sifri wird gesagt, in the Sifri, when it addresses Vayaslam Batim, so there it says as follows. Batim Elo, when it says here Hashem gives them these houses, Eini Yedei mine. I don't know what houses means. Keshu Omer, when it says in Malachim, Miktzei Yasrim Shana, at the end of 20 years, Ashabana Shloime Shnei Abatim, when Shlomo Melech built the two houses. As Beis Hashem, he built a house for Hashem, Zukohuna. So the house of Hashem is referring to the Beis HaMikdash, where the Kohanim serve. There's Beis HaMelech, and the house for the king, a palace, Zu HaMalchus. This refers to kingdom. So we see here in this pasuk that the Batim refers to Kohuna and Malchus. So therefore the Sifri says, Zachsa Yecheved LeKohuna. Yecheved merited to have Kohuna in her descendants, Miriam LeMalchus, and Miriam merited to have kingdom in her descendants. So, seems to be pretty similar, but there are differences in the way the Gemara says this and the way the Sifri says it. Now let's see how Rashi quotes this. Now that we see what the Gemara says and what it says in the Sifri, we need to understand the way that Rashi brings this. So Rashi brings the words of the pasuk Vayas Lahem Batim and is mefarish and says as follows: Bate Kohuna Levia uMalchus. Batim refers to the houses of Kohuna, Levia, and Malchus. Shekriyim Batim, and they're all referred to as houses. And Rashi brings the pasuk that the Sifri brings Vayiven as Beis Hashem as Beis HaMelech, that he built a house for Hashem, which is the Kohuna, and Beis HaMelech kingdom. Kohuna Levia mi Yecheved. Kohuna and Levia come from Yecheved. That's Moshe and Aaron. Umalchus mi Miriam, and kingdom, which is David HaMelech, comes from Miriam. And Rashi concludes, Kideise b'Masechta Saita, as this Pshat says in the Gemara in Saita. So Rashi is telling us that he's quoting this Pshat in the pasuk here from where? From Saita. So here the question comes up, Rashi's quote, the way he brings this Pshat, is actually closer to the way it's said in the Sifri, not in the Gemara in Saita. And the Rabbi points out three things which are more similar to the Sifri than the Gemara. So on one hand, when you look into the words of Rashi, bring to Rashi, what does Rashi here bring? Aleph number one, Sai Kohona on Sai Malchus vi in Sifri. Rashi quotes without any argument that Batim means both, Kohona and Malchus, as it says it in the Sifri without an argument. Und nicht wie in Gemara, wo das einen Deis Reb Machlekes. Unlike in the Gemara where it brings this, that this is an argument between Rav and Shmuel, which one it was. There's another thing that Rashi's quote is more similar to what it says in the Sifri. Their pasuk is Beis Hashem, Beis HaMelech. The source that Batim refers to Kohuna and Malchus was brengt sich in Sifri, aber nicht in Gemara. Rashi quotes this pasuk as it's quoted in the Sifri and it's not quoted in the Gemara. Gimel, a third point, sagt Kohuna uLevia mi Yecheved. Rashi spells out that Kohuna and Levia come from Yecheved, uMalchus mi Miriam, and kingdom from Miriam. Wie in Sifri, as it's quoted in the Sifri. Nit wie in Gemara, unlike the way it's said in the Gemara, was is nit mefaret from wem Kohuna or Leviah sind herausgekommen. There the Gemara does not specify from whom comes Kohuna and Leviah, nor is mefared ver Kohuna, Leviah, Malchus zenen. The main thing the Gemara quotes and points out is who exactly are Kohuna, Leviah, and Malchus in the descendants. But the Kohuna, Leviah are Aaron and Moshe. Umanda Omar, but the Malchus, David, Nami, Miriam, Kasi. So here the Gemara is, yes, it does say that it comes from Miriam, because we wouldn't know otherwise that David comes from Miriam, but the main focus in the Gemara is regarding who are the ones that were the Kohuna, Leviah, and Malchus, Aaron, Moshe, and David. And Rashi doesn't mention any of that. So it's pretty clear that Rashi is quoting from the Sifri. Yet is Rashi Messiah Pirushai. Rashi concludes his Pirush on the Pasuk Kedisa b'Masechta Saita, as this is brought in the Gemara in Saita. Nit Kedisa b'Sifri, not that this is the way it says it in the Sifri. Okay, so that's the question over here. Why would Rashi say he's quoting Saita when it's clear that he's quoting the Sifri? So the first thing here, that Rashi does not mention the fact that there's an argument about this. So that could be explained very simply. According to the explanation of the commentaries, in the Machlokes from Rav and Shmuel in Gemara, explaining what's behind this argument of Rav and Shmuel in the Gemara, whether Batim refers to Malchus or refers to Kohuna and Leviah. As he is totally in the friedige Plukte from Rav and Shmuel in Gemara dort, this depends on a previous Machlokes there in the Gemara, between Rav and Shmuel, they argue about the identity of who these midwives were. Chad Amar, one opinion is Isha Obita, it was a mother and daughter. Chad Amar, Kala v'chamaisa. Another opinion is that it's a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. And the Gemara explains, Manda Amar Isha Obita, the one that says that it's a mother and daughter, this is Yecheved and Miriam, as we mentioned before, Yecheved and Miriam. Manda Amar Kala v'chamaisa. If it's a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law, so who is this? Yecheved v'Elishava. This is Yecheved and her daughter-in-law, Elishava, that was the wife of Aaron. So therefore the Mefarshim say as follows. The opinion that says that this is a daughter-in-law and mother-in-law is Bati Kohuna me Elishava, Ishto shel Aaron. So when it says that the reward was Bati Kohuna, so this refers to the descendants of Elishava being the wife of Aaron, so all Kainim came from her. Bati Leviah from Yecheved. And then the Leviim which come from Yecheved, being the mother of Moshe, and all the Leviim that came out from him. Later day Isho Bita, and then according to the other opinion, that Isho Bita refers to main Batim, Oich Batim Malchus. If it's a mother and a daughter, so then Batim over here refers also to kingdom as well. Batikona Uleviah from Yecheved, both Kainim and Leviim come from Yecheved, the descendants of Moshe and Aaron. Batim Malchus from Miriam. And the kingdom comes from the daughter, which is Miriam. So that's why there's an argument whether part of the reward includes Malchus or not. If Miriam was a midwife, then it includes Malchus. If Elisheva is the other midwife, then there is no Malchus here as a reward. So now we understand why Rashi doesn't mention any argument about this. Because Vibalt, as Rashi learned via Shifri Mefarish Geven, since Rashi understands and explained already earlier as the Miyalda is Shifra Upoa, the midwives, which the Pasuk refers to them with the name of Shifra and Pua, what was their true identity? Zeni Yecheved and Miriam. This is the mother and daughter Yecheved and Miriam. Komtais as Batim is Bati Kohuna or Leviah un Bati Malchus. So therefore Batim refers to all. Kohuna Leviah from Yecheved and Malchus from Miriam. So that's clear why Rashi doesn't make a machlekes out of this. As bleiben aber schwer shara de yukim. However, the other points mentioned before regarding that Rashi quotes from the Sifri, even though he says that he's quoting the Gemara, ubeike. Primarily here, the question that we have to understand is what says medayik k'de isa b'mesechta saita. Rashi is very specific to say that he's quoting something from the Gemara and Saita. I mean, Rashi doesn't even always tell us where he brings it. Usually, Rashi does not tell us where he's quoting his Pirush from. Here, Rashi makes sure to tell you it's coming from Masechta Saita, meaning that it's relevant to know what it says there in the Gemara and Saita to understand the Pirush that he's telling you. Afapi, was says Meisav the Raya from Pasuk, was bringt sich in Sifri, and then he brings the Raya from the Pasuk in Malachim regarding the term Batim, which is only brought in Sifri. And sagt euch wie in Sifri as Kohuna is from Yecheved, and then he quotes it the way it says it in the Sifri that Kohuna comes from Yecheved, nit viloshna Gemara, unlike what it says in the Gemara, Bate Kohuna or Leviah are Aaron and Moshe. that this refers to Aaron and Moshe. So what is the pshat in this? Why is Rashi emphasizing the inyan of Gemara Saita? Here the Rebbe then quotes the other details here in this Rashi, specifically the raya that Rashi and the Sifri bring from the pasuk in Malachim regarding the term batim, and this also needs to be understood. What exactly is this raya? Euch darf verstehen, the raya was Rashi bringt from pasuk is Beis Hashem ves Beis HaMelech. That Shlomo HaMelech built a house for Hashem and a house for the king. So this is the source that batim refers to Kohuna, Leviah, and Malchus. So Aleph, the first problem here is Rashi Taitchtoch Vayas Lehem Batim. Seems that Rashi is interpreting the term of batim here, houses, nit batim kipshutai, abinya. It doesn't literally mean a house, a structure. Nor bate kohuna v'cholo. The houses of kohuna, what does that mean? Bayis b'muvam from mishpacha, from kohuna, leviah, or malchus. Bayis over here means the family of the kayanim or leviim or kingdom, malchus. Is doch the pasuk was Rashi bringt. If that's the case, so the pasuk that Rashi brings, araya lista. This is actually a proof to contradict what Rashi is saying. Varim Beis Hashem and Beis HaMelech zanim batim kipshutam. Over there it's talking about Shlomo HaMelech that literally built houses, the Beis HaMikdash and a palace. And it seems that Rashi is trying to say that the term batim should not be taken literally, but it means the families of the Kainim, Leviim, and the Melucha. So why would Rashi bring this pasuk here? That seems to contradict the whole point he's trying to say. Beis, another question on this raya, Iseirim Izu. Questions even further, Megefind, under the psukim, we do find in other psukim, with the Lashon Bayis gate of the Inyan, Beis Kohuna Leviah, where it clearly, the Bayis clearly refers to the family of Kainim and Leviim. One pasuk is, Beis Aaron Baruch Hashem, Beis Alevi Baruch Hashem. What does that mean over here? Beis Aaron, the house of Aaron. Was dort meintoches, nita Bayis Gashmi. There the term Bayis does not mean a physical house, nor Bayis b'muvam von the Mishpacha. There the Bayis means the family of the Kainim. The Mishpacha from Kohuna and the Mishpacha from Leviah, both the family of Kainim and Leviah. So this is a clear pasuk that Rashi could quote as a source that the word Bayis means a family. Al derech zeh men by Bate Malchus. Similar, we find psukim regarding Bate Malchus that it doesn't literally mean a house, but it means a family. Yasa Hashem ladoni Bayis Neman, which means the family. Beis HaMelech Hazinu, the house of the king should listen, also family. Or Shimon Beis David, or Beis David Kelekim. Was in the Yalerte meant Bayis, nit Bayis Gashmi. In all these psukim, the word Bayis does not mean a physical house, nor Beis Mishpachas HaMelech. It means the house, the family of the king. So now the question is, Hein Favaz break mit Rashi oti psukim. Why, if Rashi wants to tell you that Batim here means the family of Kohuna, Leviah, and Malchus, why doesn't he quote these psukim? Bayis meint net kipshutai, nas a gate of mishpachas kohuna, mishpachas malchus. Here we clearly see that Bayis is not literal, but it means a family. Gimel, another thing about the raya that Rashi brings, in Rashi shalafanenu, and the Rashi, the way we have it, quoted, state, Rashi quotes the pasuk of Malachim, Vayiven as Beis Hashem. Vayiven, he built the house of Hashem as Beis HaMelech. The Lashon pasuk is abanitazai. It's not what it says in the pasuk. There's no word Vayiven there. In pasuk state kanal, the pasuk that it says there, as was quoted before from the Sifri, Ashabana Shloime as Shnei Abatim. Shloime HaMelech built two houses, as Beis Hashem, as Beis HaMelech. So where does this word Vayiven in the Rashi come in? Okay, so the Rebbe will begin with the last point that we're discussing over here to try to understand what exactly is Rashi's understanding of the word Batim. How do we interpret the word Batim? Before we get to the more general subject, to understand Kohuna, Leviah, and Malchus, and why Rashi chooses this pshat over other pshatim, which the Rebbe will quote later in the Sikha. There are other Mefarshim in the Pasuk that have other pshatim, what Batim over here means. But here, first the Rebbe wants to explain to us what is the meaning of Batim according to Rashi, and what is the proof that Rashi brings for this. The Bir Bezeh, so the explanation for this is as follows. The Raya, was Rashi bringt from Pasuk, as Beis Hashem, as Beis HaMelech, the proof that Rashi is bringing from this Pasuk, is nit, as the word Bayis wird genitzt, auf Bate Kohuna or Leviah, bemoven from Mishpacha Kohuna or Leviah Cholo. The point here of Rashi is not to prove that a house, Bayis, could be used in the context of meaning a family. Vi, by the psukim Beis Aaron, Beis Alevi, Baruch Hashem, as quoted before, as you see it in the other psukim of Beis Aaron, where it means a family. In them is Kinchidish Nita. There's no novelty about such an interpretation that the word Bayis could mean a family. Rashi hat schon früher mefarish given as Bayis mein Toich avodav ubnei Beisai. Rashi already earlier tells us in Parshas Vayigash that the term Bayis does not mean a house, but it means his servants and the family, the people in the home. Nit nur Bayis mamish, not a house literally. On wie mir gefindt kama pamen beteire. This is said, and we see it many times in the Torah. And one of the places are actually right here in the beginning of this week's parsha. Elish Shemos b'nei Yisrael. It says ish ubeisei bo. Ish ubeisei does not mean that they brought their house, but it means they came with their families. That's not the chiddush of this Rashi. So the Raya was Rashi bringt da, the proof Rashi is bringing is of them as b'shas steht the loshem batim stam. When the Torah says such a term, vayas lehem batim, that Hashem made for them houses, just plain houses, nit oisteichendig wegen welche Bayis es retzach. And the Torah does not specify what kind of houses is it talking about. Can this mean in batei kohune levia umalchus? So Rashi is saying that the term batim stam can actually be referring to kohune, levia, and malchus. And for this, Rashi brings a proof that the term batim, just plain batim, is a term used in relation to kohuna, levia, and malchus. So here as well, the word batim, stam, plain as without any additional specification, refers to kohuna, levia, and malchus. That is what Rashi is coming to prove. Rashi is mamshich shekruyim batim. And Rashi goes on to say, why is the term batim stam a term that could be referring to kohuna, levia, and malchus? Because we find that kohuna, levia, and malchus in the Torah is described as plainly batim, houses. In pasuk via Brengterai, in the pasuk which Rashi proves. Now, what does it say there? That Shlomo Melech built ha-batim as Beis Hashem as Beis HaMelech. So first it says that Shlomo Melech built as Shnei ha-batim, the two houses, and then it says, what are those two houses? Beis Hashem as Beis HaMelech. So here the Rebbe inserts and clarifies that what is the correct girsa here in Rashi when Rashi quotes the Raya from this pasuk. V'yeshloimar as azay dav zayin the girsa in Rashi. This is the right girsa, the way to read the quote of the pasuk in Rashi. Habatim anshtot vayiven. The word vayiven that we have in the Rashi in print, it's a mistake. That's there's no such a word in the pasuk, so that can't be what Rashi is quoting. It should be replaced with the word habatim. The word vayiven, this isn't Fusei Rashi, is atos from Maitik. It's a mistake of the printer or whoever copied this over. And the Rebbe in Ha'ara 29 goes into the details to explain how this mistake developed. Well, this is the right quote from the pasuk. Habatim as Beis Hashem as Beis HaMelech. Now, what is this double lashon here in the pasuk? This extra word of habatim, and then it specifies Beis Hashem, Beis HaMelech, which goes on kohuna, levia, and malchus show. The lashon is shnei habatim. First, it says batim stam, and an added word here of just plain batim was the pasuk leit dartzu, which is added here in the beginning, which is extra. Taish the pasuk laich up, and then the pasuk goes ahead and explains as this main Beis Hashem, Beis HaMelech. This refers to the house of Hashem and the house of the king, which is Kohuna, Levia, and Malchus. That's the proof of Rashi. What do we see from here? Ubemela is move on. So from this we understand, as the word batim, stam, when the pasuk here adds this extra word batim plainly, versteht in a pasuk. So therefore here as well, when we see here vayasla and batim, and it just simply plainly says batim, houses, what does this mean? Main taich, this could also be referring to Bate Kohuna, Levia, or Malchus. It refers to Kohuna, Levia, Malchus, which is related to a bias, as we see in a pasuk in Malachim. That's what Rashi is coming to explain. So now, what do we understand from this? Is the word batim in this pasuk, is the meaning of this word a house, literally a physical house? Is it a house in the sense of a family? That's not the discussion here at all. As the Rebbe clarifies here further, was the far, so therefore as Cain stirinit, there's no contradiction here. Das was dorten main batim, Beis Hashem, Beis HaMelech, batim kipshutam. In the pasuk there in Malachim, batim actually does mean literal houses, the Beis HaMikdash and a palace which Shlomo Melech built. So over here, when Rashi says that the term batim refers to Kohuna, Levia, and Malchus, he's not negating a literal house, a physical house. Warum does Rashi nit eisen as batim stam meint from Kohuna, Levia? Again, let me read that again. Warum does Rashi nor eisen? Because the main and only point actually that Rashi here is coming to say is as batim stam meint from Kohuna, Levia, and Malchus. When the Torah uses a plain term of batim, it could be referring to Kohuna, Levia, and Malchus. That's the main point. Und sie kennen sein batim kipshutam. Now, the term batim can actually either be referring to a house physically, literally, or the batim b'muvim from mishpacha. And the batim could also be referring to as a family. The term batim, that's not our discussion here, what the term batim here means. Both are true. There's both aspects to it, and both are true. But the term batim in the Torah is related to Kahuna, Leviah, and Malchus, as we see from Malachim. That's what Rashi is proving as a source to his pshat, that the schar of Vayasla and Batim that Hashem rewarded Yocheved and Miriam was Kahuna, Leviah, and Malchus in the descendants of that they had in the world. Okay, that's the simple pshat, simply how to read the flow in Rashi, what the raya here is, and what the meaning of Kahuna, Leviah, Malchus is. Okay, but now here, though, the Rebbe comes back to actually explain a more fundamental point. As mentioned, there are other pshatim in the Mefarshim what the reward of Hayas Lehem Batim is. What's the reason why Rashi chooses specifically this pshat of Kahuna, Leviah, Malchus, which actually seems to be a pshat that's further from the simple pshat of the pasuk than other pshatim that there are. So let's see. The Sifei, the Rebbe brings other pshatim in the pasuk. The question though here is, what is the hechrich b'pshuta shel mikra lernen as es meint dafke di drei sugi batim? What forces us in the simple pshat of the pasuk to say that the schar here of batim means these three types of houses that could be referred to plainly as houses, and it's Kahuna, Leviah, Malchus. But the Kahuna, Leviah, Malchus. Mekendach lernen, you can simply learn as es meint batim and allgemein, that Hashem gave them the reward of houses in the general sense, not attributed or related to anything specific. Videtaich from word batim umetum, as the meaning and the translation of the word batim always. Kepirish kamim afarshei Torah, and as other commentaries here, in our case, translate this. And here the Rebbe brings two of the interpretations that Mefarshim say right here. Aleph, one is, as Reibishter hat aufgestellt batim. The reward was that Hashem built for them homes, kedei bashitzen und ratten from pare, for them to have a place of safety and protection to save themselves from pare. So a place to hide and a place to protect themselves from pare. That's the reward, physical homes to be and to live in. Beis, another interpretation, as we mentioned before, the other interpretation of the term batim, as it is many times in Torah, as batim da meint bonim. Batim over here means children, mishpachas, families. And this is a reward for these midwives that kept the children that they gave birth to alive. For this, that they helped and assisted in the birth of Jewish children. So they helped create Jewish families. They were paid measure for measure, that they had their own children and they were able to create their own Yiddish families. That's a very simple and straightforward pshat, and it's midah keneged midah, measure for measure. Was beide pirushim zene lochayre mer masim b'pshuta shel mikra. Both of these interpretations fit easier and better into the simple understanding of the pasuk more than Rashi's pshat. Weil, for the following two reasons. Aleph, number one, the vod batim vertan getayich kipshutay. So according to these interpretations, we can translate the word batim simply. Or the gashmi is the gebatim, whether it means literally physical houses, or the mishpachis, or it refers to families. Was migefin bekam is b'Torah, as mentioned, this is quoted this way, or it's said this way many times in the Torah. Nit ados is a remes of batikahona leviah malchus, and not that the word batim is a word that sometimes is related to kahuna leviah and malchus, which is just a hint, dafke specifically these houses. And a source for this is only found in Sefer Malachim, because it's not usually what batim literally means. Beis, another reason why these pshatim are simpler in the pasuk, it makes more sense to interpret this way because vayas is past tense. That the reward was that Hashem had already built for them these homes. By contrast with Rashi's pshat, is doch der Inyan abatim from Kahuna Leviah gekommen lachazman. The Kahuna and Leviah, that was the reward that came only a time later. Malchus David is gekommen mit kamet deirish better, and the kingdom of David HaMelech was many generations later. So how does that fit into the simple meaning of the pasuk vayas that seems to be talking about the past? So why does Rashi choose his pshat in Vayaslam Batim, which seems to be just a remez in the word of Batim? So the explanation for this is as follows. Let's look at the broader context of the pasuk here. The pirushim, that is, these other interpretations of the commentaries, is Rashi Shailel, Rashi negates this. The mit, was Rashi sagt dem Pirish, besmiches und behemshich zum Friedig im pasuk. Rashi says the pshat that he says here, together with and as a continuation of what he explains and what it says in the previous pasuk, when it talks about the reward, Vayetev Elokim lamiyaldos, and Hashem did good for the midwives. And there Rashi says, what does this mean? Mahu hateva. And what is this good? What is the reward? Vayas lahem batim. That Hashem built for them homes. Und es meitig euch die Wörter vayas lahem. And Rashi also quotes from the pasuk these two words, vayas, that Hashem made for them these homes. So what is Rashi doing by connecting the beginning of the previous pasuk, where it says Vayetev Elokim, and now the end of the next pasuk, where it says Vayas Lam Batim? These two things don't say in the pasuk one right after the other. So what's Rashi doing here by connecting them? With this, kommt nit no mefarer sein. Was the Vayetev Batzitzech, Rashi is not just simply coming to explain. The Vayetev, when it says that Hashem did good, He rewarded them. What is this reward? So that would seem to be the simple thing that Rashi is coming to clarify, which is also true. That the Vayetev is connected to the conclusion of the next pasuk, where it says Vayas Lam Batim, even though Vibal, das steht in pasuk Shalach is nit besmiches zu Vayetev. When it says Vayas Lam Batim, it says other things in the psukim in between, as the Rabbi is going to quote a little bit later in the Sikha. So since they don't say right near each other, so Rashi is connecting them. Vayetev refers to what it says in the end of the next pasuk, Vayas Lam Batim. That's simply what Rashi is coming to explain. But really, there's something deeper here. There's something more that Rashi is coming to say by connecting these 2 points. Additionally, Masber u'machriach zayin, Rashi wants to explain and prove to you the pirish from Vayas Lam Batim, the way he chooses to interpret Vayas Lam Batim, not like the simple pshat that other mafarshim say, but that it refers to Kahuna, Leviah, and Malchus. So the source of this, the explanation for this pshat, is because we see that the Vayetev Elokim, the reward and the goodness of Hashem, refers to this, that He makes for them these houses. That's what forces Rashi to say that there's something more here, that there's Batei, Kahuna, Leviah, and Malchus. And the Rabbi explains, if the pasuk would gemeint, if the pasuk would simply mean as Rabbi b'shat fazeh gemacht binyanim, that Hashem built for them houses, buildings, zu bashitzen matzel sein sei, to protect them and to save them from parai. So Aleph number 1, there's a simple question. The language in the pasuk should be, as it usually says regarding building a home, vayiven, that Hashem built, not that Hashem vayas, that He made for them these homes. Beis, but another point here, and this is going back to the previous point, the connection of Vayetev and the Vayas Lam Batim, pasnit im im from Vayetev. The term Vayetev, that Hashem is providing and giving goodness to them, doesn't really fit according to the pshat that the Mefarshim say, that Hashem just built them homes for protection. Was meant Teive, v'teisvesinyan. Goodness means Hashem is giving them something in the positive sense, something good. Nit ashlila, not just a prevention to protect themselves, as all nitshaten, not to be harmed from pare. Why would that be referred to as Vayetev, that Hashem is giving them some goodness? Al-Derech is similar, according to the other pshat mentioned before, that Mefarshim say that Batim refers to the families that Hashem built for them. Oy the Pirish is, as you have geboren Bonim and Reugeshtot Mishpachas, that Yocheved and Miriam gave birth to children and built their beautiful families. What is the special goodness here? Something unique and novel that Hashem gave them. This is true, and this happened with all Yidden, even before Yocheved and Miriam did what they did here, that they kept the children alive. Is, what does it say by all Yidden? That all Yidden were fruitful and had many children to a tremendous degree. So there's nothing unique here. There's no Vayetev special schar for Yocheved and Miriam. So since when it says Vayas Lam Batim, this is the schar of Vayetev, so therefore Rashi says, as Batim domeint as spezielle teve. When it says here Hashem builds them homes, this is referring to a unique goodness that Hashem gave them, which is the Batei Kohona Levio Malchus. The houses of Kohona, Levi, and Malchus, this is something unique that Hashem gave only them. Nitztam haben sie aufgestellt, wie alle Yidden, Mishpachas. Not only did they establish, like all of Klal Yisrael, families, nor from sie sind herausgekommen, Batim, from them came out houses on a different level. What kind of houses? Yeses eis, v'yeseros. This is the expression that it says in the bracha of Yaakov to Reuven, when he says yeses eis, v'yeseros, that he should have deserved to have yeses eis and yeseros, that he should have had more power and more might. And Rashi there says this refers to Kohona and Malchus, which is Bate Kohona, Levi, and Malchus. So this expression of yeses eis and v'yeseros, this is what Yocheved and Miriam was zeiche, not just to establish families like all of Klal Yisrael, but a strong and powerful and dignified families of Kohona, Levi, and Malchus. That's why Rashi says the pshat that he does in order to explain what's unique about this reward, what's this special goodness that Hashem gave them. But here, though, there's another detail that Rashi has to explain regarding this subject. And this is where the Rebbe is going to come back to the original question of the Sikhe. Why is Rashi saying that he's quoting from the Masechta Saita, even though it is clear that Rashi is quoting from the Sifri? Nevertheless, Rashi adds in the end Masechta Saita because he wants you to look at what it says in Masechta Saita. Und kedei madgish sein dem Levi Yisrael von dem Pirish, in order to emphasize what is the advantage of this pshat that Rashi chooses, is Rashi mitzayin kedisa b'Masechta Saita. So Rashi tells you that this is a quote from the Gemara in Saita. But das is nicht nur kedei zu anweisen dem Mokke. Rashi is not just simply showing you the source, because the source is really more from the Sifri, nor rather Rashi here is coming to answer the choice of this pshat, where there's another question that comes up here. The l'chayre, seemingly, there's another great advantage to the pshat that the Mefarshim simply say in the pasuk. It's well understood, according to the other interpretations that the Mefarshim say, is the schar vayasleim batim in gufa inyan. The reward is something which relates to what happened over here, to what they did. According to the first interpretation, what happened over here? They weren't afraid of Pare. That's what happened. Pare told them to go and, God forbid, kill the babies, and they didn't listen. So Hashem gave them the reward to be protected from Pare. Pshite leiten zweiten Pirish, and definitely according to the second interpretation, as Batim means their bonim and mishpachas, that Hashem gave them children and families, it's mida keneged mida kanal. So of course, if they helped Yidden establish families and give birth to children, so Hashem gave them also beautiful families. So this is measure for measure. So this pshat shows us how the schar here is a schar related to what they did. However, according to Rashi, is the schar, as the schar is bate kohuna or levia or malchus, that the schar that Hashem gives them, yes, it is vayetev, it's something unique, which is kohuna, levia, and malchus. But kumtais, however, it comes out as dovet gegeben as zaitig schar. The reward that they got is seemingly a completely side, unrelated reward. It is not the end from the minion was the miyaldas am getan, but the chayenes hayaladim. The schar that they're getting is in no way related or somewhat similar to what they actually did when they helped Yidden give birth and establish families. What's this inyan of Kohuna, Levi, and Malchus doing here as a schar for this? So that's another problem with this pshat that Rashi here comes to explain by letting us know that he's quoting this pshat from the Gemara in Saita. Rabbi sagt Rashi kedisa b'Masechta Saita. So Rashi says that this is what it says in the Gemara in Saita. Was dorten. Now, if you take a look there in the Gemara, kommt der Pirish ve'inyan behemshach zu der Mishnah v'sugis ha-Gemara. This is brought over there in continuation to what it says there in the Mishnah, and then a whole discussion in the Gemara about this, regarding this subject of midah keneged midah, b'midah she'adam meided ba meidim loy. The way a person behaves, the measure of what he does, Hashem pays him back and acts with him measure for measure. Und die Inyanim, and furthermore, what you see there in the Gemara is, und die Inyanim from midah keneged midah. When Hashem gives a person measure for measure, was the Mishnah or Gemara Rechen and Eis, which the Mishnah there goes on to enumerate, then in Kailul in Yanis Charva Einish, it includes various different things of reward and punishment as well, which are keneged, corresponding, or in the Zelbe Midafun, in the same exact measure as, jeden Prat von Maise Adam. Every single detail of what the person has done. So here, if you look into the Gemara and the Mishnah and the Gemara there, you'll see to what extent the midah keneged midah goes. It's not just a midah keneged midah in the general sense related to what the person did, but it's really midah keneged midah with every detail of what the person has done. Now, over here, this explains why Rashi brings up Kohuna, Leviah, and Malchus, because this is actually the real midah keneged midah with every single detail. Und then wird move on der Yisrain in dem Pirish Bote Kohuna, Leviah, and Malchus. With this, we could understand the advantage that there is with the pshat that Rashi brings, that we're talking about Bote, Kohuna, Leviah, and Malchus. That's the reward specifically. Why? Das bringt heraus because what Bote, Kohuna, Leviah, Malchus, what this kind of reward, what does this express? Nit nor dem Geidel Aschar. It's not just to point out, as the Rebbe said before, because it says Vayetev, so this has to be something different and unique, that this was a very great reward. Nor rather, Be'ikir primarily, Vidas is midah keneged midah. This actually is measure for measure, and b'chol ha'pratim, and it's measure for measure in the details here. Neged pratim from Zeh Maisa, corresponding to the details of what they accomplished. If you look deeper into what came out as a result of what they did when they allowed the babies to live, so from this you'll understand how this char is uniquely midah keneged midah. How is that so? The po'ola from the miyaldis, and then was what chayena sayiladim. This that the midwives, Yocheved and Miriam, did when they allowed the children to live, the babies to live, is given nit nor das, was haben durch dem geholfen, as sollen aufgestellt werden jüdische Mishpachas. Doesn't only simply mean that they allowed the babies to live, and with this to be able to establish Jewish families. Nor, but if you look deeper and further into this, what was the result of their action? Nor durch dem hat sich aufgestellt dem Reuv od de ganze Dor Yetze Mitzrayim. Through their actions, they established most, if not all, of the generation that came out of Mitzrayim. From wem es kommt heraus, the ganze Am Yisrael atzev kol hadeiros. And this is from where the entire Jewish nation comes from for the end of time. So they are the ones that, with their actions, if you look at the final result that comes out of this, all Yidden alive today are a result of the action of these two women, Yocheved and Miriam, that did not kill the babies. They brought them to life, and they established Klal Yisrael for all future generations. That's really the extent of the action that they did. So therefore, is the schar ba'ofen the midah keneged midah or bepratius. So therefore, the measure for measure here is not simply in a detail of establishing of one family, or the detail of being protected from Parai, which was a certain detail of that they weren't afraid of Parai, so Hashem gives them protection. But the midah keneged midah includes looking deeper into the result of what their actions had accomplished. So therefore, the reward is not just simply that Hashem provides for them something specific, that they now have a nice family, or that they haben got Kinder, Kayanim, Leviim, and Malachim. Or even when Rashi quotes over here, the fact that the schar was that, now they had descendants that were Kayanim, Leviim, and Malachim. And it's not, the reward over here is not the fact that they have such a beautiful family that they can take pride of, that they have such nice, beautiful, and great, dignified children. That's not the point of this reward. Nor rather, from Zeis and an Oivgebeut geworden, the point of here is the result of what comes into existence later in Klal Yisrael. That we have Bate, Kohuna, Leviah, Malchus, the houses, Bate, the Bate Meyuchadim, the Yesaseis, the Yesaraz, as Rashi explains, that you have Klal Yisrael as a whole unit, as a whole existence of a nation. And within the existence of the unit of the nation of Klal Yisrael, you have the house, the unit of something which is more powerful, more dignified within Klal Yisrael. And that is the Bote, Kohona, Leviah, Malchus. Shebi Yisrael, which exists in the nation of Yidden. Atzev kol hadeiros, till the end of all times. That is the real midah keneged midah. Just like what they did is bringing Klal Yisrael into existence, and for all the end of time, so the end of all generations. So therefore Rashi also emphasizes, Bote Kohona Leviah Malchus, within Klal Yisrael itself, you have the unit and the dignified section of Klal Yisrael, which is Kohona Leviah Malchus, and that's what they were zeicha to. So this is uniquely midah keneged midah bepratius. That's why Rashi chooses dafka this pshat, and we could understand this based on the Gemara in Masechta Sotah. Masha'enken and Sifri, by contrast, in the fuller in the fuller context of the way this concept is quoted in the Sifri. Even though euch dort steht, there as well it says, yes, that this is the same reward which Rashi quotes, the Kahuna and Malchus. Kommt aber der Inyan in Sifri, however, there the context in the Sifri is different. Als number one, as a raya, it's bringing it as a proof to the following concept. One that takes a step to bring himself close to Hashem, from heaven they draw him close. So and it brings examples for this, and this is one of them. So there it doesn't discuss this concept of the extent of measure for measure, that you have to look into the actual details of the result of what happened to really understand to what extent Hashem's reward is also including this result of what you receive in this reward. Rather, there is just discussing the general idea of a person that's taking a step to bring himself close to Hashem, so Hashem responds in kind, in the general sense, to draw him near to Him. This is a general concept that's the same with any good action that a person does. As quoted there in the Sifri, as we find this in other places, Al Shekirvas Atzma, Kach Kirva Makim. She drew herself near Hashem, so Hashem brought her near to Him. That's in the Sifri. But in the Sifri, it doesn't pay attention to the detail, to look into the result of the action that's done here. Beis, Nital Tzaninim from Beis Yisrael, Ali Yidin. In the Sifri, when it talks about the reward here, that for what Yocheved and Miriam did, it doesn't talk about the reward here in relation to the whole existence of the nation, of Klal Yisrael, for the end of all times. And the Kohona Leviah Malchus being also part of that existence of Klal Yisrael. Und der Rebbe steht dort nit botte Kohona Malchus. In the Sifri, when it talks about Kohona Malchus, it does not use the expression of botte, the homes. Weil dort redt sich nit wegen botten bei Yisrael, because in the Sifri, where it doesn't talk about the detail of this schar, so it doesn't talk about the botten bei Yisrael. The schar zeh, was durch sie ist aufgestellt geworden, kol beis Yisrael. As a reward for this, that not only they right then established Yiddish families, but they also are the ones that brought the entire Klal Yisrael for all future generations. The Sifri doesn't go into it to such detail, doesn't focus on that. And therefore it doesn't say bote kono malchus. It just simply says that they got a schar, that their children were great, dignified children. Kohona, and they were Kainim, they were Leviim, they were Malachim. Rashi is talking about something else, about Klal Yisrael. And part of Klal Yisrael, there's the most dignified and greatest ones in Yidden. There's Yesaseis and Yesa'os. That's Bate Kohona Leviah Malchus. That is what Rashi is quoting here. It's a completely different understanding in the focus of what the schar is. And Rashi really, is this is the focus that the Rebbe said before. This is what Batim, Stam, and the pasuk means. The way the Torah chooses to say the language here for what the schar was, it doesn't say a language where it clearly says Kohona Leviah and Malchus. It uses the term Batim. And Batim is related to and refers to Kohona Leviah and Malchus. Because yes, it's talking about the union of Kohona Leviah and Malchus, but not just Stam Kohona Leviah and Malchus as a personal schar for them that they have such nice and beautiful and great dignified children. But rather it's referring to the existence within Klal Yisrael of the greatest segment of Klal Yisrael that came from Yocheved and Miriam. So this is the schar for the whole existence of Klal Yisrael that was brought into being through Yocheved and Miriam. That's the context and understanding of the schar here, the way Rashi quotes it specifically based on what it says in the Gemara in Saita. Okay, that's one point of why Rashi brings Gemara in Saita. Yeshleima, now we can add another detail here, as mit Kedisa b'Masechta Saita. When Rashi quotes the Gemara of Saita, this answers another question that comes up over here with what Rashi says, and here the Rebbe will get into more detail in the point that I mentioned before, that when it says Vayasla Batim, and Rashi says that this is a continuation from what it says in the previous pasuk, Vayetev Elokim, that this is the goodness, this is the schar that Hashem did for them. These two, they're not written together. There's something that comes in between. So the question is, why is Rashi ignoring that here? Haschalas HaKosev is the beginning of this pasuk where it says Vayaslem Batim, it says Vayihi Ki Yoru Amiyaldis Esolikim, and it was that these midwives were fearful of Hashem. So then it says, Vayas lehem batim. So Hashem made for them homes. So simply you have to learn and understand this. As the schar, Vayas lehem batim, that the schar of the homes is of them was Yaru Eselakim. It's what it says in the beginning of this pasuk, that they were fearful of Hashem. Not only what it says earlier in the previous psukim, that they allow the children to live, but right over here for this point of the yireh, the fear that they had from Hashem. Aber the schar of them. So, but however, though, the interpretation of how batim, vayaslam batim, is a schar for this, for the yireh that they had of Hashem, gefindt men in Medrash, God an anderen. So in Medrash we find that yes, it connects these two, that the Yoros Alakim and Vayaslam batim, but there it says a completely different shot of what the schar is. Vayetev Alakim chulu, hadod chsiv chulu, this is what it says, and then the Medrash goes on to say, mahu schar hayireh. What is the schar for this? That they were fearful of Hashem, Torah. That from them comes the source of Torah. The Yara Yechevet Mipnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because she was fearful of Hashem, Hemed Mimena Moshe, so therefore came out from her Moshe Rabbeinu Shekasav Baiki Toivu. Regarding Moshe, it says that he's Toiv, he's good. V'nitna Torah Yada Shenikras Lekach Toiv, and the Torah was given through him, and Torah is also referred to as a good acquisition. V'nikras Al Shmai, and the Torah is referred to as the Torah of Moshe. Shenem Zichru Torahs Moshe Avdi, the Torah of Moshe, my servant. That's the reward for the fear of Yechevet. Miriam Yatsa Mimena Betzalel, and from Miriam also came out someone that had a unique connection to Torah, which is Betzalel. Shoyimale Chachmo, full of wisdom. Dechseva Male Oser Ruach Elikim. Hashem filled him with the spirit of Hashem. And Va'asa Arayin LeTorah, and he's the one that built the Arayin to hold the Torah inside of it. That's what the Medrash says. So the schar of Vayasla and Batim refers to Moshe and Betzalel, that the schar is Yaro Esalakim, the yireh is connected to Torah. Moshe and Betzalel connected to Torah. Now what's the connection of Torah to the inyan of Yaro Esalakim? How is that midah connected midah? Even in the simple pshat of learning the pasuk, is das l'chayre mer masim v'shayich zu vayihi ki Yaro hamayaldis Esalakim. This is more connected and more befitting as a reward for the fear of Hashem. Varom, der inyan ha-Torah is doch, vayitzavena avaya lases es kol hachukim eila leyira es Hashem Elokeinu. What is Torah? Torah is, we learn the Torah, and that brings us to fulfill the mitzvahs and to be fearful of Hashem. So therefore, as a schar for them, Yaru Elokim, they were zeicha for descendants that brought Torah to the world, that built a aron for Torah. But this is a schar achin haila. This is a very great reward. Was durch Moshe, ihr Sohn, Moshe Rabbeinu, the son of Yechevet, hat Rebbe gegeben Torah li Yisrael. Hashem gives Torah to the entire Klal Yisrael. Und wie darf man nicht ankommen zu lernen. So if this would be the pshat, so then you don't have to come and say, as the Vayete v'lekim lameyaldois, that when it says in the previous pasuk, that Hashem did good for the midwives, gay, then was steht besium, hakasav shalachar is there, that it's related to what it says in the conclusion of the following pasuk, Virashi learned, as Rashi explains this, and there's a break in between with the Yadu Selikim with other things. Now the schar is of them was steht bas chalas kasav zeh. The schar over here refers to what it says right here in the pasuk. Ki Yadu hamayaldis Selikim, that the midwives were afraid of Hashem. So why does Rashi relate this back specifically to what it says earlier by Yetev, that it's going on this, that they allow the children to live and so on, and not to the fear of Hashem that the pasuk is pointing out in the beginning of this pasuk? So this as well is answered with what Rashi points out in the end when he says, take a look what it says in the Gemara in Saita, and there you'll see why we're focusing on the schar of Vayasla and Batim in relation to what it says earlier, that Vayetev, that Hashem did good for them for this, that they allow the children to live, and not regarding the detail of the Yiras Hashem that they had. What do we see there in the Gemara? In the Mishnah, the Sugya and Masechta Saita. So going back into the Mishnah and the Sugya there in the Gemara and Saita is Mavuer. You can see, it's understood from there, that inyan, from Midah Keneged Midah, that this idea that Hashem gives a reward measure for measure is Nit Keneged Regesh V'Kavanas Adam. This is not focused on the feelings or the intentions that a person has in what he does. Nor keneged zay maise b'poil. The midah keneged midah, the measure for measure, is corresponding to the action that the person did, regardless of his feelings or intentions. Und der Inyan is mudgish and pshutush mikra. And this is something which is also emphasized even in Pshat of the Pasik, and Rashi, hat schon herabgebracht frier, b'pirusha al Torah, Rashi brings this rule of midah keneged midah, measure for measure earlier, the Inyan for midah keneged midah, which refers to maise b'poil, the action that the person does, that Hashem treats the person midah keneged midah. We see this in the Mabel, where there it says, Heim chotu b'rabas ra'as sa'adam. Their sins were, in the Pasuk uses the term Rabbas Ra'as, that was very great. They're evil in their actions, and Veloku b'tohaim Rabba. And therefore the punishment was also the great depths with the flood of the water that came up in the Mabel. So it's referring to the actions. That's the concept of midah keneged midah, without focusing on the feelings or intentions that the person has. So therefore, this relates back over here as well regarding the reward that the pasuk here says, "Vayaslam batim," where the Torah tells us specifically what the reward was, and this is midah keneged midah. Is al pipshut yishal mikra muvan, and the simple understanding of the pasuk is understood as the atave on the scharda, that the goodness and the reward is nit as zayfil fazer kavano machshava. It's not to such an extent focused on their intentions or their thoughts, yaro salakim, the fear of Hashem. Nor beike primarily for what they actually did. Zayinik miyaldes, being midwives, and that's in the name. Shifra. Shifra means shemishaperes asavlad. She soothes the baby, and pua means shapayim medaberes v'hoigel avlad, and that talking and making sounds to calm down the baby crying. Un v'techayenes hayaladim, the action of actually making the babies live. Helfen oivstellen batem b'Yisrael, to help establish the homes of Yidden, biz kol beis Yisrael. As mentioned before, the further result of this is the existence of the entire Klal Yisrael for all future generations. That's the action. That's the main thing in Maaseh B'Poel in this world that was done. And if them is the schar, so for this the reward is nit azoi das was yechevet at geboren azon was nit netayra yodai. The schar here is not so much this idea that she had a son that was such a great person, that the Torah is given through him. Al derech zeh mailas Betzalel, or similar, the great level that Betzalel was on. Varom, das is nit kein bias. This is not a kind of reward which is midah keneged midah, corresponding to the action that she did. The action is to establish the nation, the house of all of Klal Yisrael. The fact that she has a great son, which is the greatest thing in the world, bring Torah into the world, or Betzalel, on a great level that builds the Arain, that's not midah keneged midah for establishing the house of all of Klal Yisrael. Das ist nicht nimshach geworden zu Sarai v'zera Sarai nor Musar v'Yeshua. This that Moshe Rabbeinu was a great person, he was a great person as a son of Yocheved. Yes, that is a great reward, but that's just as a great son that she had. But not that this shows on a great unit of a whole family, that a certain segment of Klal Yisrael that she had as a reward for establishing and bringing all of Klal Yisrael into existence. This is not something that was then continued or carried on to the next generation. This leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu and this greatness was given over to someone else, to Yeshua. It's just one individual that she had a great son like Moshe Rabbeinu. So what is though the real reward of midah keneged midah for the action that she did, which brought to the building and the establishment of the entire Klal Yisrael, Beis Yisrael, the reward of having within the entire nation of Klal Yisrael, the segment of Klal Yisrael which is the greatest, the most dignified, and on the highest level, the Kohanim, the Levim, and the Malachim. That's the Batei Kohonu Levi Malchus. That is the real reward, midah keneged midah. So therefore Rashi learns that this is the main schar over here, which is midah keneged midah, and it's connected to v'techayenes hayaladim, not the schar related to yaro esalakim, as it says it in the Medrash. Now here, after all of this, so we had over here quoted from the way it is in Rashi, which Rashi is gleaning primarily from the Gemara, even though he quotes languages of the Sifri. On the other hand, we had the Pshat of the Sifri, and then the Rebbe also brought us the schar that it says in the Medrash. 3 different approaches to the reward over here, besides the Pashtaniya Mikra, which the Rebbe mentioned before. But here the Rebbe concludes and explains how we can see over here these 3 different approaches, that each approach is appropriate for who it is that's saying this pshat. Let's see. We could see over here how everything in Torah is very precise. Not only are there 3 pshatim over here, but the place where these 3 pshatim are said and who's the one that's saying it makes a big difference. That it shows us different ways of how you approach a schar or a subject in Torah. Even though this subject that we're saying here. What did Yecheved and Miriam merit as a reward? Is an inyan von Agada or Drush. So this is a subject of Drush, of an Agada, to understand deeper what the schar is. We could see the difference in the sources. Was das is in Pirish Rashi and Gemara, wie das is, that is. The way it's quoted in Rashi and Gemara. Wie das is in Medrash, and then the way it's quoted in Medrash, and wie das is in Sifri. And the way the Sifri looks at this, what does this schar consist of? So it's not just simply that each one randomly chooses another approach to understanding what the schar is. No, it's very precise. As the chiluk is, behessen zu die klolim u gedorim, von dem chelik beteure, wo der Inyan steht. The fact that each one quotes the schar the way he does, it's because it's a different section in Torah, and every section in Torah has another approach, another layer of an understanding Torah, and therefore accordingly it understands also what specifically the reward here was. And the Rabbi explains, beginning with the Medrash. In Medrash, when it comes to the Medrash, was is drash va'agadisha b'Torah. This is expounding on Torah on a deeper level. Was man sagt, and regarding this it said, Alter Rebbe brings this, Moishchen libay shel Adam. Actually, sorry, this is a quote here from the Gemara first. That Moishchen libay shel Adam ka'agada. This draws the heart of a person, like the stories and the deeper understandings of Torah. Midrash belev. So this is the section of Torah that interprets Torah related primarily to the emotions of the person. Additionally, brengt zu Yireh Shemayim. This is the section of Torah that encourages a person and brings a person to have fear of heaven. Is the ikke mile of Adgasha. So here, what's mainly highlighted in the Medrash, das was Yaru Amayaldas Asalikim, the fact that the act that they did was a result of their fear of Hashem. Und the Rebbe is dort mudgish deschar, ma'al schar hayire teirechulu. So the Medrash highlights primarily the reward, not just for the action, but for the motive and for what's going on in the heart internally, the Yiras Hashem that they had. And the reward for this is Moshe Rabbeinu, the gave us Torah. That's the Medrash approach. In Sifri, aber on the other hand, though in Sifri, was is Beker Halachis. Sifri is primarily a Medrash, but a Medrash of Halachis, verbunden mit Maisa. And therefore, it's primarily connected to action. Is the schar and initial Maisa. So therefore, the schar here, the reward here as well, is related to something in the world of action. Kohona o Malchus leneged ze Maisa. It's the Kohona and Malchus that there's the children that they have, which are Kainim and Malachim, related to the action that they did, that they brought children, families in the world. So Hashem gives them special families, special children, which are Kohona and Malchus. That's referring not to their intentions and to the Yiras Hashem, but to what they actually did. That Goshe and Maise. However, here in the Sifri, what's being highlighted in their actions is Abenita Inyan Proti from the Asiya Protis. We're not looking deeper into the result of what came out of their actions. No, that Sada Shave mit andere Meisen. Rather, we're looking at the general point of the actions, Mekarev Atzmai Folgen the Maibishn. The general point over here that they listen to what Hashem said to them, that they should give birth to Yiddish children and establish families, and therefore Hashem also gave them families, gave them beautiful and great families. But this is all in the general sense, not looking deeper into what was the result of what they had done. In Pirish Rashi, however, when it comes to Rashi, Pshuta Shel Mikra, Rashi says simple, plain, literal pshat of the pasuk. So here, when you learn Torah on this level, this takes you down to even a more simpler and basic level to look into the details of the action. Rashi is gleaning this from the Gemara, and also in Gemara you find many times it brings things in the simple and literal sense. We could have Kamapam as already spoken about once. So over here, what you begin noticing as Loya Medrash Ela Maisa. Medrash, expounding and looking into the intentions or other things that are inside the person, that's not the main thing. The main thing is the action, the Maisa B'Poil. Was in them is in jede Maisa Negeya, nit bloß the Tzad HaShaveh von alle Maisem Tovim, and over here in the Maisa, what's relevant is not only the general action that's done which maybe you may be seeing a lot of different actions that all have a common denominator, that you're listening to Hashem, coming close to Hashem. Now over here, hamaisa, when you say leya medrash ika ela hamaisa, it means a person that wants to focus on details, and therefore he's in the world of medrash because he wants to expound in the details. So to this we say to him, no, the ika is the maisa. The ika in the details, the details is in the maisa. Over there, in the details of the maisa. Now the teichem prati from the asiyah prati. So therefore we have to look into the specific details of the actions. And what exactly specifically was the result? What was accomplished through the maisa here? So therefore here we focus deeper and see the result of the maisa of what Yocheved and Miriam did. The Rebbe is Donigeya, the schar. So therefore, what's relevant over here? That the Pshat that Rashi says based on the Gemara. What's the schar from Bate Kohona Olevio Malchus? Not just simply that they established families and therefore they had a beautiful family of their own and a very dignified family, but the specific emphasis of Bate Kohona Olevio Malchus, that they established Klal Yisrael. So they have established the greatest segment of Klal Yisrael came from them. Und verbunden euch mit des Beis Hashem, des Beis HaMelech. And the source for this comes from the pasuk where it talks about Shlomo HaMelech building a house for Hashem and a palace, which are batim kipshutoi begashmias. As the Rebbe pointed out earlier in the Sikha, we're not negating simple homes in the literal sense physically. Because the Maila here of what Yocheved and Miriam did is that they established and brought to life lebedige gemacht batim b'Yisrael. They are the ones that bring the entire nation of Klal Yisrael, the homes of Klal Yisrael, until the end of all times. That includes, in the sense of families, in the sense of literally, physically, the homes where you can live, Kana Barucha, as explained already before at length. This is specifically Rashi's approach when you look into the details and the result of the action that they did. Here the Rebbe concludes with a tremendous lesson that we can take out of all of this in valuing and seeing what is the main reward that is more valuable than others. As you see here, different options of explaining what the reward is. What's the reward that Rashi chooses to say is the main reward that they received to what they did? From the reward that Rashi highlights, we can take out an amazing lesson. Coming back to what the Medrash says before. The Medrash says that what's the reward for what they did? They were fearful of Hashem, so Hashem gives them Moshe Rabbeinu that brings Torah to the entire Klal Yisrael. Rashi does not choose that reward. Now, l'chayre, seemingly, Enochanami, yes, it's true, as der Inyan, was Moshe is given there, was nitne Torah al Yodeh. Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that the Torah is given through him. Is nit kein midah keneged midah schar for Yocheved and Miriam. As explained already, this is not the measure for what Yocheved and Miriam did. And that's the reason in the simple pshat where Rashi doesn't bring this detail. Das ist doch aber fort der größte schar, was man kann haben. However, though, if you want to measure what's a greater schar, seemingly there can't be any greater schar than this, than having a son like Moshe Rabbeinu that is the one that brings down the Torah for the entire Klal Yisrael. So it's not midah keneged midah, but seemingly this schar that the Medrash says is the greatest schar possible. But, says the Rebbe, no, that's not the case. Is mindam madgish, what Rashi here is emphasizing is, as this is da, noch a geresser schar. Rashi is quoting this schar not only because this is the schar midah keneged midah, but this is actually an even greater reward. Nachas, and a greater nachas for a Yiddish mama for a Jewish mother. Bate kohona levia umalchus. To have established in Klal Yisrael houses of kohona levia malchus, that is a much greater level of schar. And the Rebbe spells out, Nit azoi, was sie hat, azun, was is a greise, lamden, boki, chare v'chayetze bezeh. The greatest schar does not consist of the fact that a person can say, look at the son that I have. I have a son that's the greatest lamden, greatest scholar, the sharpest learner, and so on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. That he's the one that receives the Torah, and he is the greatest son that I have here in the world. That's not considered to be the greatest reward and the greatest nachas for a Yiddish mother. Rather, nor does aufstellen batim b'Yisrael, the fact that a mother can establish a Jewish home, bate kohona levio malchus, and not just a plain Jewish home, but a very Jewish home on a high level, Yiddish kinder, to have Yiddish children, and kindskinder and grandchildren, talmidim and talmidim, students and students of students, helfen Yidden zu bauen Yiddish heimen, The fact that you are the one that is assisting to build Jewish home, to build the Jewish nation. Not something that you have, it's you, that I have this great child that brings Torah for Yidden. But that you are the one that were Zeiche to be instrumental to build Klal Yisrael. Durch Peilen of jeder und all jüdische Kinder, by impacting each and all Jewish children, as euch sie sollen sich beteiligen in der Anhage von Kohonel Levium, Kohonel Malchus, that they as well should take part in being part of the home of Kohonel Leviah and Malchus. That is the greatest reward and the greatest nachas. To see the result of what you have created, what in Klal Yisrael you have built, not what you have for yourself, but the segment of Klal Yisrael that you were zeicha to bring into the world. But in Yana Beruchnius is, now here the Rebbe gets into the details of what are these three things of Kohoneh, Leviah, and Malchus. What are they? Chotch, although, as Bechlalos, is Sai Kainim, Sai Leviim, in Yanam, Lehibadl Lamed, Lefnei Hashem, L'shas Eloy Decholo. So looking at first Kohoneh and Leviah, so there is a similarity between them. Both Kainim and Leviim, what is their main position in Klal Yisrael? They're separated, and they are supposed to stand in front of Hashem, to serve Hashem, and so on. Zera Levi, Kule Muvdol Avedis HaMikdash. The descendants of Levi are separated to serve the Eibush and the Beis HaMikdash. But there's still a distinction between the Kayanim and Leviim. Is Iker Avdoleh by Kayanim. The main separation to be in that level to serve in the Beis HaMikdash is primarily by the Kayanim. For Zaytun, the Avedis HaKarbanis, Ukteires, with Beis HaMikdash. Their Aveda is in the Beis HaMikdash, the Karbanis and the Keteiris. Also expressed by the fact that a Kaim may not become Tummy in order to be able to do the Aveda. He may not even leave Eretz Yisrael, go out of Eretz Yisrael. But by a Levi is Nitodeiser, and this does not apply by a Levi. This aspect of building Klal Yisrael, which are the Kayanim, what does this refer to? Is Inyan HaKohoneh, the Pirishus V'Havdalah von Inyan Ya'ilam. This is the aspect of Klal Yisrael. In order to build Klal Yisrael, you have to have this aspect of being separated from worldly matters, not to assimilate. Dveikus v'Schabris Sulakus, rather to cleave and to become one, to connect to Hashem. That's the Kayanim. Levi. Now, Levi is not on the same level as a Kayin. Geita Reisel Chutz La'aretz. The Levi is allowed to go outside of Eretz Yisrael. He's even allowed to be tummy to go into a Beis HaKvaris. The says in Yonai, B'chol Masecha V'drachecha, what this refers to in the Aveda V'Yid, in building Klal Yisrael in the ways and in the actions of a Yid, is was arbet umacht iber, the fact that a Yid works and can even transform to elevate and to bring even those that are outside, to bring them also into the fold. It is chutz la'aretz, bizin adarge from Beis HaKvaris, a Yid which is outside Eretz Yisrael, and even to be in a place which is in the place of a Beis HaKvaris, which resembles Hepech HaChaim Rachmana Litzlan. This is a person that's in a place that's the opposite of life, in the spiritual sense as well. On im macht a Levi lebedik, and that's where a Levi reaches, and a Levi brings life there. Biz as euch yeh Hashem chelke v'nachlosei la'olam alol me'olam, that he could come to the level of a Levi, which becomes the portion, the inheritance of Hashem forever. Punkt vi Kayanim u'Leviim, like the Kayanim and Leviim themselves. So Kayanim give to Klal Yisrael this aspect of our existence to be completely removed of this world and connected. The Leviim give to Klal Yisrael the aspect of what we need to go out to some extent, to bring the ones that are outside, to come to the level of the Leviim, to become dedicated to Hashem. But then comes the Batei Malchus, that's a level lower. But a Levi, because when it comes to the level of a Levi, is verbunden mit Kainim. The Levi is still connected to the level that the Kainim are on. As the Pasuk describes the name Levi, who the Leviim are, v'yilavu alecha v'yishasucha, that they accompany you, the Kainim, and they serve you, the Kainim. Mit Avedis HaMikdash mit Amakim Kodesh, to serve in the Beis HaMikdash in a holy place. Ubemela is move on, so it's understood as Eich Zeh Wirkung is nit as they feel in Welt. So therefore their impact is not so much in the space of the world itself. Der Ort wo Leviim der Griechen hat a gewisse Scheiches zum Mikdash Kedusha. The place where the Leviim reach to bring people in is only such people that have some relation to the place that they want to bring them. The Leviim bring the people up to them, to the place that they are. So they can only reach those that have some connection to them to be able to be brought in. However, when we're talking about building Klal Yisrael, we're talking about including everybody, reaching out into the furthest place. To bring the Eibishter into the entire world. And that's what Bate Malchus is. Bate Malchus is the kingdom of the Eibishter that's brought out to every single Yid in every single place in the world where he is, over there on the outside. And by that, to bring the kingdom of the Eibishter to everybody in the world. And das is the emes nachas was a Yiddish Mama hat. This is the real, genuine nachas that a Yiddish mother has. Was sie stellt auf Batem, that she establishes homes durch Deures von jüdische Kinder, generations of Yiddish children, was führen sich bepchinas kohuna olevio malchus, that are conducting themselves in this manner, building Klal Yisrael, in all these three aspects mentioned here. Und demolt, and then, gehen ereis alle tzivus Hashem from Golus Ha'achren. All of tzivus Hashem, which refers to all of Klal Yisrael, leave this final last Golus, wie es gewen in Mitzrayim, similar to the way it was when Yidden left Mitzrayim, as Yotzu, called tzivus Hashem, all of tzivus Hashem, was then aufgestellt geworden, von den Miyaldes Evriys, that were established by the Jewish midwives, Yocheved and Miriam, Me'eretz Mitzrayim, they left from Eretz Mitzrayim, U'beroisham, and at their head was Moshe, which Yeshurun Melech, regarding Moshe, it describes him as a king. That's the union of Malchus. And Aaron HaKohen at the head of Yidden, Shiftam, and their Shevet Levi, on Yotzin, B'yad Rama. And you go with the outstretched arm of Hashem leading us.